Let us look at a man named Viktor. Not the icon or the intellectual. Viktor Frankl, a psychiatrist, a father, a regular husband. He marched into Auschwitz in 1942, holding absolutely everything. His family, his manuscripts, his entire life's work. He emerged in 1945 with practically nothing left. Almost nothing. Because here is what they failed to steal. What the guards, the hunger, and the brutal torment could not rip away no matter how hard they tried. That sliver of space between a brutal event and his chosen response. He named this the absolute last of human freedoms. Inside that freedom, that quiet, unbreakable gap between a trigger and a reaction, Viktor Frankl did more than just outlast the Holocaust. He laid the groundwork for a new psychological resilience. He penned Man's Search for Meaning, cementing one of history's most powerful texts. He lived to 92, lectured across the globe. He forged a legacy that buried every single captor who tried to crush his spirit. You and I need to face a hard truth right now. If a prisoner in a death camp uncovered that mental freedom, what is our excuse? What is actually preventing you from forging a mind that simply cannot be shaken? A character that refuses to fold when life hurts. One that stays disciplined when the room is empty. A mind that slowly, quietly builds such ironclad discipline that outward success has zero choice but to trail behind you like a shadow. My practice focuses on that exact standard. We are not talking about cheap motivation that fades out by Tuesday afternoon, or watching self-help videos and pretending that counts as doing the actual work. We are building genuine mental toughness from the inside out, using Stoicism, a practical philosophy rigorously forged in history's most brutal fires. Today, we are going to unpack 12 foundational Stoic principles together. Skip the hollow social media quotes. This is raw, ancient wisdom, brutally pressure-tested by some of the most formidable minds to ever walk the earth. Emperors, slaves, generals, prisoners. Those holding total power and those holding absolutely nothing arrived at the exact same truth. The quality of your existence depends entirely on the character of the mind perceiving it. Drop one single word below right now. Type the one trait that defines the exact mind you are training to build. Just one. Show me what you are actually made of. Before we begin the real work, let me handle a critique I hear constantly in my practice. People claim this ancient philosophy is dead. They constantly ask how a dead emperor could possibly fix their mortgage, their daily anxiety, their screen addiction, or their career. I welcome that skepticism, because the actual honest answer is absolutely everything. Here is what modern society totally misunderstands about the Stoics. They were not monks hiding in caves. They were not soft academics drafting theories in comfortable towers. Marcus Aurelius commanded Rome's massive empire while battling a ruthless, continent-spanning plague. A disease killing 2,000 citizens daily, massive military invasions, and a vicious political machine that would have instantly broken a lesser mind. He penned Meditations, the most raw, intensely personal diary you will ever read from a global commander. Zero fame, no publisher, just raw, private notes from a man practicing how to master his own mind. Look at Epictetus. Born into brutal slavery, legally owned by another. Once, his master violently twisted his leg merely to prove his absolute power. He warned his owner the bone would snap. When it finally gave way, Epictetus simply stated, "I told you it would break." Zero rage. No massive mental collapse. He maintained total authority over his inner world despite lacking any physical freedom whatsoever. Then consider Seneca, who was one of Rome's absolute wealthiest men. Yet he suffered double exile, barely escaped execution, buried his closest friends, and was ultimately forced to commit suicide by Nero, his very own student. He embraced death with more calm than most adults manage in daily traffic. These men were not fictional legends. These were flesh and blood men confronting brutal agony, who practiced daily, deliberate mental conditioning to forge an absolutely unbreakable inner fortress. Their exact training framework, the daily practice for building genuine resilience, is what you and I will dissect right now. 12 core principles. Every lesson stacks on the previous one, and you apply them immediately, not tomorrow, not when your messy life eventually calms down. Start today, because here is the massive error beginners make when practicing Stoicism. It is absolutely not about burying your natural emotions. It is not about apathy. I never teach it as some robotic, cynical withdrawal from reality. True practice means building roots so brutally deep into your own core values and character that when the inevitable storms of life hit, and they always hit, they can howl all they want without ever uprooting you. Picture a rugged oak versus a delicate glass vase. The glass looks pristine in absolute stillness, but one harsh gust shatters it completely. The oak is battered, deeply scarred, completely imperfect. Yet after 5 decades of brutal weather, it stands taller. The storms literally forced it to grow tougher. We build the oak. Principle 1. Dichotomy of Control, the greatest lesson you'll learn. In my philosophical practice, this is the concrete foundation. Every other habit sits on top. Fail here, and nothing else functions. Master it, and life shifts. Some elements we control, others we don't. Our judgments, our pursuits, our desires, and aversions are ours. Simply put, our own deliberate actions. What sits entirely beyond us? Our physical bodies, reputation, and worldly power. In short, whatever is not our direct action. That is the Enchiridion. This doctrine sounds almost embarrassingly, brutally simple. It feels too basic to be profound wisdom, right? Stick with me. Watch exactly what happens when you and I rigorously apply this mental tool to total chaos. In 2008, the global financial crash hit. Markets folded. Massive generational fortunes just vanished overnight. Thousands of market traders and investors went into absolute psychological freefall. Marriages crumbled under the anxiety. Some even ended their own lives. But a different breed of investor, practitioners of real mental toughness, responded in a completely different way. They had trained their minds to separate what they controlled from what they didn't. They didn't control the market or housing prices. They didn't control government policy. All those factors sat firmly outside their circle of influence. But they controlled their risk management, their portfolio allocation, and their emotional reactions. Those variables lived strictly inside their circle. So when the crash happened, panic never set in. They stayed calm. They turned methodical. They evaluated what sat inside their circle and acted. When the inevitable recovery hit, their portfolios were perfectly positioned. Same external crisis, entirely different internal discipline, totally different results. Let's map this out together right now. Picture 2 circles, one small inner circle, one massive outer ring. Inside that small inner circle, place everything you have absolute, sovereign control over. Your focus, your daily effort, your core values, your reactions, and your habits. In the massive outer ring, dump everything else. Other people's opinions, the economy, your genetics, the weather, social media algorithms, or whether your new startup idea actually catches fire. Now, this question will completely rebuild your relationship with stress. How much of your mental energy are you bleeding into that outer ring? Most people, even the exceptionally smart ones, burn the vast majority of their precious mental energy. Out there in that outer circle, they rehearse arguments with ghosts who aren't even in the room. They imagine worst-case scenarios that never happen. They obsess over public opinion. They lose sleep over simple market fluctuations. They doom-scroll the news just to feed their anxiety. Then they wonder why they feel totally exhausted and powerless. What happens when you finally flip that script? Consider the story of James Stockdale, a United States Navy pilot. Shot down over Vietnam in 1965, he spent 7 years locked inside one of history's most brutal prison systems. Guards tortured him over 20 separate times. He was refused medical care. They locked him in solitary confinement and paraded him for propaganda. Yet he emerged with a stoic clarity that made him a legend in American military history. He eventually took command as president of the Naval War College. When asked how he survived, Stockdale shared an incredible psychological truth. He said, "I never lost faith in the end of the story. I always knew I would get out, and that this ordeal would become the defining event of my life. Something I would never trade." Asked who didn't survive, Stockdale replied, "The optimists, the guys who swore we would be free by Christmas. Then Christmas passed. Then they claimed we would leave by Easter. Easter passed. Then Thanksgiving came and went, and then another Christmas. And they died of a broken heart." He added, "This lesson is crucial. You must never confuse the absolute faith that you will eventually prevail, which you cannot afford to lose, with the iron discipline needed to face the brutal facts of your current reality." We call this the disciplined acceptance of reality. Not passive weakness, but clear-eyed, active engagement with exactly what is happening right now. Strip away the wishful thinking. Lock onto your inner circle. Accept the outer reality. Do the actual work where you have agency. Drop what you cannot control. When you and I finally practice this, really live it, not just read about it, everything shifts. Your anxiety drops, not because your struggles magically vanish, but because you stop fighting reality and start mastering it. Drop one thing in the comments you are obsessing over that sits completely outside your control. Name it. Brutal honesty precedes freedom. Principle 2. The obstacle is the way. We turn resistance into fuel. The impediment to action actually advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way. This might be the most counterintuitive mindset shift we practice today. Because your brain is naturally wired to view obstacles as stop signs. Face a block, and your mind immediately signals pain and retreat. It is evolutionary. It kept our ancestors alive, but it destroys real growth. Ancient practitioners knew what modern psychology is just now proving. That resistance, that heavy friction, it is not blocking your path to mental toughness. It is your path. In December 1914, Thomas Edison watched his massive research and manufacturing complex catch fire in New Jersey. A massive fire, visible for miles. 10 entire buildings were completely destroyed. The damage hit $2 million, about $50 million today. At 67 years old, Edison simply stood there, watching his entire life's work burn. His son Charles found him near the flames, his face unreadable. Charles expected his father to be completely broken by the devastation. He rushed over. Edison turned to his son and said, "Go get your mother and her friends. They will never see a fire like this again." The very next morning, walking through the ashes, Edison declared, "There is massive value in disaster. All our old mistakes just burned up. Thank God we can start fresh." 3 weeks later, parts of the factory were running. 3 months later, record-breaking production. The disaster did not break him. It reorganized him. It burned away the dead weight and built the foundation for something stronger. Here is how you and I apply this Stoic discipline today. Pick a real obstacle you are facing right now, nothing hypothetical. Then ask yourself these 3 questions. Question 1 in our practice. What skill is this obstacle forging within me? A job rejection trains your resilience, sharpens your skills, and forces clarity. A collapsed startup teaches you hard lessons about market timing and your true core values. Both are pure fuel. A painful breakup trains your communication, tests your boundaries, and deepens self-awareness. Question 2 for my own mindset. What unique perspective is this setback giving me? The most resilient founders trace their massive breakthroughs straight back to the exact failure that forced them to change course. The label that slammed the door. The investor who passed. The corporation that handed them a pink slip. Without those harsh rejections, their ultimate success doesn't exist. Question 3 in our discipline. Who am I becoming by facing this head-on? Not just how do I survive this, but who will I stand as on the other side? Because the person who battles through this hardship is fundamentally stronger than the one who runs away. We Stoics are never naive about the reality of pain. The ancient masters didn't fake a smile. Seneca documented his own grief with brutal honesty. Marcus Aurelius journaled about his exhaustion, openly admitting he sometimes hated leaving his bed. But they conditioned their minds to face the wall and immediately ask, what does this demand of me today? Not, why me? Not, is this fair? Simply, what is required of me right now? In my practice, that question is a psychological weapon. Next time you hit a wall, and you and I both will, try this exercise. I call it the 3-second Stoic pivot. Second one, own the emotion. Don't shove it down. Don't fake being fine. Let it burn. Second 2, label the actual obstacle in front of you. Drop the victim narrative. State the raw facts. Then, in second 3, ask our core question. What does this exact moment demand of me? You will fail at this early on. That is fine. The training is what matters. After months of daily effort, that pivot becomes pure instinct. Roadblocks stop causing panic and start sparking curiosity. Drop a comment for me. What is the heaviest burden you have ever converted into rocket fuel? How did that forge you? Share it, because another student out there needs your exact lesson today. Principle 3 in our philosophy, amor fati, the radical love of fate. Most schools teach you to just accept events. Some suggest finding peace. Our Stoic ancestors pushed harder. Marcus Aurelius and later thinkers like Nietzsche demanded we actually love our fate. Do not just tolerate the storm. Never just accept it. Love it. Amor fati. It sounds unhinged to modern ears. Love the illness? Love the deep betrayal? The career ruin? We do not love the raw pain itself, but we embrace every single event, suffering included, as the essential clay required to sculpt a powerful life. I view it like this. A master sculptor never curses the stone for being dense. That resistance is the entire point. Without that friction, the chisel just slips through empty air. The art demands the friction. That is how we must view adversity. Look at Nick Vujicic, born in Melbourne in 1982. He entered this world missing all 4 limbs due to tetra amelia syndrome. His doctors were completely baffled by his condition. His parents were crushed. Growing up, the bullying was so vicious that he almost ended his own life at 8 years old. Then, his mindset pivoted. He adopted a practitioner's lens. He stopped asking, "Why me?" and started asking, "What is this meant for?" He transformed himself into a speaker. Since then, he has reached 900 million people across 70 nations. He built a family, raised 4 kids, and generated tens of millions of dollars in wealth. But here is the ultimate Stoic flex that strikes me. He admits that if a surgeon appeared tomorrow offering him arms and legs, he would say no. Because the steel of his character, the massive reach of his influence, the true quality of his bonds. None of that reality exists without his darkest misfortune. That is living amor fati. Not just, "This is fine," but rather, "This is mine to own. This is the rough material fate handed me, and I take pride in building with it." Our emperor Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Loss is merely change, and nature loves change." He was not being poetic. He was actively training his mind in his private diary. He deliberately rewired how he viewed loss and chaos. Now, you and I are going to try this exact training for 30 days. Every morning, before touching your phone, write out one event from yesterday that hit you as bad, heavy, or totally unwelcome. Then list 3 specific ways that friction forced your personal growth, tested your clarity, or forged your grit. Initially, you will write weak, shallow answers. That is expected. Push through. We are actively rewiring your brain's pattern recognition. You are conditioning your mind to instantly spot the tactical advantage hidden inside the pain. After a month, fellow practitioners report a radical shift. They stop reacting like victims and start responding like strategists. Emotional thrashing shrinks. Cold clarity hits faster. This is not toxic positivity. We do not pretend failure feels good. This is a severe cognitive overhaul anchored in ancient Stoicism and completely verified by modern neuroscience. Let's look at this together. What is one deep scar from your past that actually forged you into the resilient person you needed to become? Leave your answer below. It matters. Principle 4 in our work: the discipline of desire. Craving what actually holds value. Here is a brutal truth about human suffering my studies revealed. The deepest misery rarely comes from lacking possessions. It sprouts from believing we deserve things we lack. The agony lives purely in the gap between objective reality and our entitlement. Usually, we cannot alter reality. But as practitioners, our true power lies here. We can ruthlessly interrogate and change exactly what we think we need. Epictetus taught that a master does not mourn what is missing, but commands joy for what is present. Do not mistake this for settling. This is never about killing your ambition. As a practitioner, I study the Stoics, some of history's most ambitious minds. Today, you and I will explore their crucial rule about wanting. First, our preferred indifference. In our practice, these are things fine to chase and pleasant to hold, but our inner freedom never relies on them. Wealth, fame, baseline health, career success, or chasing approval. I call these external perks preferred indifference. We can desire them, build them, and enjoy them. But if they vanish or never show up, a trained Stoic mind remains entirely unshaken. Then there are true goods. These are worth desiring because they sit entirely within our control. They build real virtue and profound personal growth. Deep wisdom, raw courage, justice, absolute discipline. It is the quality of our attention and our unbreakable integrity under fire. These are the true goods. Nobody can steal them. Chasing this philosophical ideal never leaves a practitioner empty-handed. Look at the 1992 Barcelona Olympics. Derek Redmond, a fierce British 400-meter runner, stood as a heavy favorite to medal. 12 brutal years of training peaked right here. But 150 meters into the semifinal run, his hamstring snapped. He hit the track in agony. The sprint dragged on. The pack crossed the finish. But then, fighting blinding pain and a shredded leg, Redmond stood up and hobbled toward that line. Track officials tried stopping him. He shoved them back. Security guards tried dragging him off. He firmly refused. Then his father shattered the security line. Jim Redmond sprinted out, wrapped an arm around his suffering son, and crossed that finish line together. 65,000 roaring fans stood up. Redmond walked away without any Olympic hardware that afternoon. He came in dead last. On paper, an absolute failure. Yet over 3 decades later, I still study this as one of the most iconic moments in Olympic history. Not for some shiny piece of metal, but for the unbreakable Stoic mindset he revealed when victory evaporated. His grit was the true good. The hardware was merely preferred. He lost the indifferent object, but forged a legacy of virtue we still admire today. Let's try an exercise together. Jot down your top 10 goals, the big milestones you are currently chasing. Review that list and ask, if I never hit this external benchmark, will the mental toughness and character I build along the way still be worth it? If yes, that ambition aligns perfectly with Stoic principles. Hunt it down aggressively, but drop the outcome attachment. If no, if your worth hinges totally on the prize, you have found a weakness that will break you. But do not abandon the mission. As practitioners, we separate the daily grind from the final trophy. We learn to fiercely respect the person the struggle creates. Mastering this mindset shift actually makes you highly effective. You stop letting the fear of failure paralyze your daily actions. You work freely, completely void of anxious attachment. Ask yourself, what preferred indifferent are you mistakenly treating like a true good? Name it right now. Awareness is freedom. Next is Principle 5, using death to clarify life. Think of a victorious Roman general parading through the streets. A servant stood right behind him in that chariot, whispering the same phrase into his ear during the roaring celebration. Remember your mortality. Not to kill the mood, but to keep the commander firmly grounded. It crushed arrogance, locked down perspective, and stopped the poison of success from blinding his judgment. Death levels us all. In my practice, I find that when you truly internalize your ticking clock, feeling it, not just thinking it, your priorities radically shift. In 2005, Steve Jobs gave his Stanford address. He detailed a Stoic habit he practiced for 33 years. Every sunrise, he stared in the mirror and asked, if this was my final day on Earth, would I still do what I am doing right now? If the answer stayed no for too long, he demanded immediate change. He was not just playing a dramatic character. He fought pancreatic cancer that exact year. He understood in his bones, way better than most, that his personal timeline was violently limited. He stated that remembering his imminent death was the ultimate tool he had ever found to handle massive, life-altering choices. Under the shadow of death, all that noise vanishes. The heavy expectations, the massive ego, the deep terror of failing, it just burns away. Only the profound truth remains. That is pure philosophical practice, delivered raw, right from a Silicon Valley stage. I use this confronting exercise daily. It slices through the fog. Sit in total silence. Shut your eyes. Picture your absolute final moments. No Hollywood drama, just the brutal truth. You are old, staring back. What do you desperately wish you did more of? What actions wasted your time? Which massive risks did you cowardly avoid? Who deserved words you swallowed? Now write those answers down hard. Do not censor them. Zero rationalizing. Because these raw words are your core principles finally screaming out loud. Whatever boils up when you honestly face the grave is your real North Star. Ignore the generic advice society shoved down your throat. Forget looking good on paper. We practice this mortality check to wake up. We do it to slash through distraction and stop enduring mediocre lives. Seneca warned us, Dum differtur vita transcurrit. While we stall, life sprints away. How much of your true purpose are you currently delaying? Which bold leaps are you dodging? How many dawns do you face trapped in a shrunken, hollow version of your actual potential? Memento mori is never a threat. It is power. You and I have today to live boldly. Execute. I ask my students this. If you had exactly 1 year left, zero chance to change your bank account, no moving, no new things, where does your focus go? Drop your answer below. Seriously, I want to read them. Now, Principle 6, Forging Fear into Strategy. Each morning before Marcus Aurelius stepped outside, he mentally mapped his day. He didn't use toxic positivity. He looked for friction. He asked, what exact difficulties await me today? Which frustrating people? What sudden roadblocks? Then, as any good practitioner does, he built a mental response for every single one. He didn't do this to spiral into anxiety. He did it to kill his own reactivity. He wanted to meet hardship fully prepared. In our tradition, we call this premeditatio malorum, the premeditation of evils. It remains the sharpest psychological weapon in our daily practice. Today, elite performance psychology backs up this exact ancient method. Look at Navy SEALs. They are the hardest mental athletes alive, and they run a mental rehearsal drill that mirrors our Stoic practice perfectly. Before deploying, they don't just sit around hoping for the best. They spend hours visualizing, in brutal detail, every single thing that might break. They map out every dead end and failure point. Then, they lock in their countermove. The payoff? When the mission goes sideways, and it always does, they never freeze up. They have already lived the disaster in their heads. They just execute the protocol, cold, fast, and calm. Make no mistake, this is not pessimism. It's armored preparation. Tim Ferriss pulled this into a modern routine he calls fear setting. He calls it his highest value yearly habit. Step 1. You and I need to name the fear. What exactly terrifies you? Get it on paper. Bleed the details. Not just, I am scared to build a startup. Write down, I am terrified to quit my job because I might go broke in 6 months, default on my house, and force my family to suffer. Step 2. If absolute ruin hits, what is your next move? What literal steps do you take? Who can help? How do you build back? As practitioners, we usually find the bottom is completely survivable. It might hurt, it might cost you, but survivable means you can rebuild. Step 3. What is the price of doing nothing? Here is the real magic. Humans constantly panic about the risks of moving forward, but we completely ignore the fatal danger of staying put. The heavy toll of swallowing your words, the price of ignoring that big idea. The hidden tax of hiding in your safe zone. When I run the math, doing nothing for 10 straight years always costs way more than the absolute worst-case scenario of actually trying. Fear is not your enemy here. Unexamined, raw panic is the real trap. Drag it into the light, and it dies. That brings us to Principle 7, binding your life to a massive external purpose. In our philosophical texts, we study the logos. It is a Greek idea meaning the rational, driving order behind everything in the cosmos. We hold that the world does not run on chaos. Events do not just happen randomly. They lock together inside one massive, rational machine. And a good life means stepping right into that flow. You have to push past your own ego and feed something much bigger than yourself. Today, people just call it purpose. It means serving others. It means building a legacy that survives long after you are gone. Take Okinawa, Japan. It is a blue zone where locals easily push past 100 years old. Scientists tracked them down and found a core life metric called ikigai. It literally translates to a reason to get out of bed. Not a desire for cash or fame. It is the deep conviction that your daily grind actually helps people, that your life carries weight. We learned this 2 millennia ago. Marcus Aurelius filled his journals writing about his duty to the Roman Empire, to basic humanity, to the logos. No one forced him. He just knew that a clear mission physically multiplies your inner strength. If your self-improvement is purely selfish, just chasing money and high status, you will eventually hit a wall. But bind your growth to a community, a movement, or the next generation, suddenly your drive becomes almost impossible to drain. Modern burnout data proves this perfectly. 2 jobs show freakish levels of mental toughness under heavy fire: firefighters and school teachers. Both gigs are brutal, underfunded, and totally thankless. Yet they consistently trigger what experts call post-traumatic growth. That is the process where a person walks through sheer hell and comes out sharper and more grounded. The hidden variable? A mission that eclipses their own ego. That firefighter charging into blazing structures is definitely not doing it for the paycheck. The teacher grading math tests at midnight is not chasing glory. They bleed for the work because a kid actually needs them. As a practitioner, I can tell you, being needed is the ultimate psychological anchor. It drags you forward long after your selfish motivation burns out completely. So let's ask ourselves a hard question. If your total success was guaranteed, if you truly became your highest self tomorrow, who else gets to win? Think about the mechanics. Is it your kids? The clients you serve once your skills peak? The actual neighborhood you protect? The quiet standard you set? The locked doors you kick open for others? Once you feel that invisible thread, your daily sweat feeds a much greater mission. The fuel changes. Your drive becomes clean, unbreakable, and totally immune to cheap outside applause. Principle 8. How we actually apply this in the real world. Stick with me here. Because the defining beauty of our practice, unlike those dusty academic theories, is that it was built strictly for the dirt and blood of real life. We do not debate. We practice. Epictetus challenged his students, and us, to stop theorizing about Stoic philosophy. He asked what we were actually doing differently. How was our behavior changing? If nothing changed, we understood nothing. Marcus Aurelius started his day with a strict morning routine. We see this in his Meditations, which was really just his private morning journal. He began by accepting that the day would be hard. He expected to face people who were arrogant, dishonest, jealous, and bitterly ungrateful. But he prepared himself with deep understanding, not irritation. He knew these people acted poorly out of pure ignorance and their own suffering. He grounded himself in what he could actually control. He reconnected with his deepest values. He wrote about how temporary his role, ambitions, and ego truly were. Then he stood up, stepped out, and ruled a massive empire. You and I might not rule empires, but this morning habit builds mental resilience. Here is how we apply it today. First 5 minutes, pure silence. No phones, no news, no apps. Just presence. Let your mind arrive gently into the day. Next 5 minutes, set your daily intention. Ask yourself what single action makes today genuinely meaningful. Not productive, but meaningful. And who can you serve, help, or truly connect with? Next 5 minutes, practice premeditating adversity. What is most likely to go wrong today? How will you stand firm when that exact difficulty hits? We are not catastrophizing, just preparing. In the final 5 minutes, reconnect with your logos, your core purpose. Why are you doing this? Who does your work serve, besides yourself? 20 minutes alone before anyone else's agenda invades your mind, before the daily noise begins. 20 minutes dedicated to forging the person who will tackle today. Most people instantly surrender their focus to emails, news, or their screens. They start reactive, and they stay reactive all day long. Our Stoic morning routine completely flips this dynamic. Before the world steals your focus, you claim it first. As practitioners, we also do an evening review. Seneca outlined this perfectly. Before sleep, he asked 3 things. What did I handle poorly today that I can improve tomorrow? What actions did I do well that I should repeat? What chance to help others did I completely miss or ignore? This isn't beating yourself up, and it's no victory lap. It is a brutal, clear inventory. We learn, adjust, and prepare to be better. When we practice this daily, the compound growth in our character becomes unstoppable. Because every single day we review, adapt, and push forward. The distance between our daily actions and our highest values closes. It happens slowly, but reliably. 1 year of this, and you are measurably transformed. 5 years in, your old self won't even recognize you. For the next 7 days, I challenge you to run this routine. Return here and tell me what shifted. Just 7 days, 15 minutes max. Let's do this together. Type yes down below if you are committed. Principle 9. Forging an unconquerable self. Marcus Aurelius leaned on one powerful concept constantly throughout his journals. He called it the inner citadel, a mental fortress of reason that stayed perfectly sovereign no matter what chaos exploded in the outside world. He wrote this while steering an empire through brutal wars, political treason, bitter grief, and a plague. He learned through blood, not theory, that the external world cannot be tamed. So he channeled every ounce of energy into what he could command. The deep quality of his inner life, his reason, his response to hardship, and his rock-solid character. We hold power over our minds, not outside events. Realize this truth, and you will find unbreakable strength. In 2004, British rower James Cracknell took Olympic gold. He later explained his mental training using pure Stoic principles, even if he didn't use our exact terminology. Weeks before the race, he practiced what he called mental toughening. He willingly forced himself into brutal situations, not because his body needed the workout, but to fortify his own inner citadel. Freezing water, dawn training when his bones ached, pushing hard when every muscle in his body screamed, "Stop." He knew the physical gain wasn't the point. It was the mental proof, the hard evidence that he could push forward when his mind begged for mercy. That lived proof formed the bedrock of his citadel. When the race turned agonizing, he possessed the evidence. He knew he wouldn't quit because he had already survived it. As Stoics, we rely on this exact rule. The inner fortress is never built in comfort. We build it by choosing the painful path when the easy route tempts us. Here is the real secret. You don't build it during massive crises. You forge it in quiet, invisible daily moments by picking strict discipline over lazy comfort. Waking up instantly when that alarm rings instead of hitting snooze, brick 1. Holding back your temper when someone disrespects you, brick 2. Tackling the grueling work instead of opening another tab, brick 3. Telling the brutal truth when a soft lie would save your skin, brick 4. None of these choices are glamorous. Nobody claps for you, but you know. Your fortress rises, invisible brick by invisible brick. Then tragedy strikes, and to your own shock, you stand your ground. You are completely unshakable. Pain still hits, but it cannot overthrow you. That is the ultimate goal. We don't seek numbness to pain. We build an internal bedrock so dense that no brutal tragedy can ever steal the absolute sovereignty of our own minds. So what regularly attacks our fortress? Shallow criticism from outsiders, toxic social media comparisons, rejection, failure, physical pain, boredom, deep uncertainty. That gap between where you stand and where you want to go. I want you and I to consider which of these punch through our defenses hardest. For every single one, the Stoic response remains exactly the same. Return to the inner circle. Ask, what is genuinely in my control right now? Fix that. Drop everything else. Over time, my friend, those Citadel walls grow taller. What used to wreck you for days, you shake off in hours. What used to derail you for hours, you drop in minutes. What once consumed weeks, you let go in seconds. That is the compound interest of daily mindset practice, not perfection. Real, measurable, unstoppable progress. So, what is the one thing punching through your inner fortress right now? What rattles you fastest? Be brutally honest. What is one brick you can lay tomorrow to reinforce that exact wall? Principle 10. You cannot do this alone. There is a toxic myth about Stoic philosophy I need to crush right now because it causes serious damage. People think being Stoic means total isolation, complete independence, never relying on a single soul. The lone wolf who needs nobody. That is dead wrong. The original Stoics taught the exact opposite. Seneca wrote pages on the raw power of friendship. Not networking, not hoarding contacts. I mean deep, raw bonds with people who push you and hit you with hard truths. They modeled virtue through action. Hang around those who forge you into a sharper person. Welcome the ones you can pull up with you too. It goes both ways. We learn as we teach. Look at Marcus Aurelius. Even as emperor, holding unimaginable power, his personal journal was packed with gratitude for the mentors who challenged his ego and shaped his character. His philosophy tutor, Rusticus, his adopted father, Antoninus, his colleagues. He grasped one fundamental truth. We never build our best selves in isolation. We forge our best selves through connection. Look at the Harvard study of adult development. Spanning over 80 years, researchers hunted for the ultimate predictor of long-term happiness, health, and mental resilience. They found one clear answer. Not money, not status, not raw intelligence. Relationships. More specifically, the sheer quality of deep, honest bonds. The kind where you drop the mask, get fully known, and stay entirely valued. The Stoics already knew this. Their philosophy schools, like the circle around Epictetus or Aurelius, were never just quiet intellectual debating clubs. They were ruthless accountability structures. People actively forced each other toward virtue. Let's look at what this means for you and me practically. Step 1. Audit your inner circle. Not everybody, just those core 5 or 10 people you burn the most time with, the ones shaping your daily thoughts. Who among them actually cares about self-growth? Who looks you in the eye and delivers hard truths? Who demands you step up? And just as critical, who drains your battery? Who drags you back to your worst habits? Who confuses your raw ambition for arrogance and your discipline for coldness? The ancient Stoics weren't brutal here. They didn't just slash people out carelessly, but they were highly intentional. They knew your crowd dictates your standards and your mental baseline. That influence often hits harder than any daily meditation or journaling practice. Step 2. Find one person, just one, someone actually further down the road than you in a domain you genuinely care about. Not some internet celebrity, a real human in your actual life you can study, learn from, and honestly build a bond with. Epictetus told us to constantly ask, what would a truly virtuous person do here? Having a flesh and blood mentor, not a ghost, gives you a real answer. Step 3. Become that anchor for someone else. Stepping up to mentor, to serve another person's growth journey. Listen, this isn't just about charity. It forces your own thoughts to crystallize. It tests your discipline and drills your own Stoic practice deeper than anything else. Like Seneca said, while we teach, we learn. Now, you and I need to talk about the people watching this right now. About you. The fact you are still here in this video, actively wrestling with these heavy philosophical concepts, taking notes, thinking hard, or sending this to someone in your corner, that speaks volumes about your character. You aren't just a passive consumer. You aren't sitting around praying for easier days. You are consciously forging yourself into a tougher machine. That is rare. That takes guts. It demands you embrace discomfort, tear down your default habits, and swallow your pride to admit you can level up. Our Stoic teachers would say you are choosing virtue. Every single time you make that hard call, the next one gets a little lighter. Slowly, the one making those tough calls just becomes who you are, not some distant goal, your actual identity. Principle 11. The ultimate finish line. The ancient Greeks had a term for the life we strive for, eudaimonia. People translate it as happiness, but that totally misses the mark. It means flourishing, thriving, operating at your absolute highest potential. Aristotle made it clear, eudaimonia is not a fleeting emotion. It is an action. It doesn't just magically hit you when life gets comfortable. It is what you build daily through the weight of your choices, your inner circle, your focus, and your grit. The Stoics backed this, and they proved it is accessible to anyone, anywhere, under any pressure. The slave and the emperor alike, the sick, the healthy, the crushing it, and the crawling. Because true flourishing does not rely on your bank account or bad luck. It rests entirely on who you are becoming and how you choose to tackle reality. Epictetus started as a crippled slave, yet lived as one of the most fulfilled humans of his generation. He literally owned nothing. He owned nothing, controlled nothing external, yet he was radically, authentically alive. That is the promise of our daily Stoic practice. Not that our lives get any easier, or that we get whatever we desire, but that we become people who live with deep courage, clarity, and purpose, no matter what the world throws at us. Principle 12. This work never ends. The final truth I want to leave you with today is this. Stoicism is no destination. We do not unlock some highest level and just coast. It is a relentless, daily, unfinished practice of forging our own character. Even Marcus Aurelius, the most powerful and grounded Stoic in history, wrote Meditations strictly as a personal journal, reminding himself where he still failed. He analyzed his own anger, his laziness, his daily battles with vanity and ego. Just like us, he was no finished product. He was a student in progress. That is exactly the point. We practitioners do not value perfection at all. We demand direction. We prize the hard daily commitment to simply outgrowing yesterday. We will not be perfectly disciplined tomorrow. We will not master our anxious minds by next week. We will not fully embody amor fati by month end. That is entirely fine. That is normal, expected even. What actually matters is our consistency, waking up and facing true north again every single day, especially after a failure. The ancients called this the continuous march toward virtue. It is our gritty, never-finished, imperfect process of forging a life of depth. Becoming someone who serves others and faces reality with courage. That is our path. That is what we have studied for 4 hours. Not a checklist. We build an architecture, brick by brick, day by day, choice by choice. Every single decision we make toward that structure, every time we choose hard discipline over cheap comfort, sharp clarity over distraction, raw virtue over impulse, that is another brick laid. Lay enough of those bricks, and we do not just build a house. We forge an unbreakable citadel. And eventually, success simply has to follow. If you stuck with me to the very end of this lesson, actually listening, not just playing it in the background, I respect that. That alone is a raw act of discipline. Most clicked away. You stayed. That matters. Now, here is what we must do right now. 3 things. First, select the one principle from today that hit you the hardest. Just one. Commit to practicing it fiercely for 30 days. Drop your choice down in the comments below. Second, send this lesson to exactly one person who needs it. Not 50 people, just that one specific person who crossed your mind during our 4 hours together. Send it now. Third, subscribe and hit notifications. You and I are building a real community of practitioners here, people entirely dedicated to forging themselves into something much stronger. True practitioners are rare. I do not want you to miss what we are building here together. Until next time, keep laying your bricks. Command what is yours, release the rest, and remember, none of us are finished products yet. You are a fortress under construction, and you are the builder. Which principle will you implement first? Comment the principle number and one hard action you will take tomorrow. Let us make our practice real.